Welcome, my name is Rob Kurver. I'm with the Nextcloud and SmartCom Summit, and I'm here today to talk to Iain Sinnott of Enreach for service providers, head of international carrier sales. And we'll get to that later, because Iain, I want to start with 30 years in the industry. You started in fax more than 30 years ago. Can you explain what a fax is?
I can explain what a fax is. A fax is a revolutionary way of speeding up written communications, and at its heyday was an exciting and really vibrant business, which through the course of time was probably completely replaced by email. But at the time, it was an exciting space. People hadn't seen communications like that before, and it took off.
And it's an example of how things change in the world of communications, right?
I mean, being in communications for 30 years has been a beautiful thing because it reinvents itself every now and again. The pace of reinvention keeps getting faster, but you certainly don't get bored examining where the innovations are coming from, what they can deliver as outcomes, and how you can engage with business and turn that into an economic way of making money and creating industry.
Yeah. So clearly, 2022 is special because we are coming out of a pandemic that has changed the world of enterprise communication, business communication, dramatically, I would say. What's your view on that? Where are we now and what's happening?
I think what was interesting to me was probably 2018 to 2020, and then 2022 as a reaction to that. I think in the industry we had seen innovations coming through. We'd evolved the tools that we could give to customers. We could see the outcomes that customers could benefit from. But there was a big chunk of inertia. You know, the SMB marketplace, which is a marketplace I've spent a very long time in, is always time poor. People are heads down, they're doing their own thing. And I know that some of the people bringing innovation through were frustrated at the speed of transition. We remained in a telecoms-orientated world to a greater degree. And then we had this extraordinary forced experiment where people had to work differently.
Right.
And I mean, I think we should just be very grateful that so many of the innovative companies had produced products that kept industry going through that period. Right. But what it did for all of us, what it did for the businesses themselves was it allowed them to see and recognize the benefit of technology in transitioning how they work with their staff, how they worked internally, how they engage with their customers, what the additional options were, where productivity might come through. And I would say for the big part of, or the big outcome from, you know, the COVID change and coming into 2022 is that people now view technology as an opportunity to improve, an opportunity to change the way they communicate and they engage with their customers. And the pace of change, I think, from now on will be very much greater and adoption very much deeper.
Do you think people are really aware or focus on the technology part?
I think no. I mean, customers are never focused on your product. They don't really give a monkey's about your product.
Right.
They
just want to get their work done, right?
Well, they're interested in their life. They're interested in what they do. They're interested in their customers. They're interested in their bottom lines. They're interested in, you know, today's challenges. There's a shortage of manpower. There's a skill shortage. There's an energy crisis.
There's
exactly.
war. There's stuff like that.
And you know, you know, some of the things that we've been talking about a lot in the last 2 years of hybrid working. You know, they know that they have to have an option because if their staff like the option of hybrid working, they might move in order to get it.
Right.
But they also know the downsides of hybrid working or the downsides of home working if they lose the engagement of their teams or they fail to foster growth in the younger members of their team. So there's a huge balancing act going on through the use of technology, but it's the outcomes of technology that people will always engage with. And I think if we can really focus on one thing in our space, which was 2018, 2019, early 2020, we talked about technology all the time, incessantly talking about the product and the cleverness.
Everybody was talking about unified communications.
Exactly, and nobody knows what unified communications is, and if you ask 20 people, they'll give you 20 answers. What we've got to think about is, where is the outcome for the customer? For each customer, it may be different. For each sector, it may be very different. But where are the outcomes? How do we deliver? What do we deliver? And I've started talking in my channel with my partners, with the people that we're engaging with, about ROI selling. The customer's ROI. What are they going to benefit from? How does it engage with them? How does it actually deliver a return on investment? Because once customers start to buy technology for an ROI, for a return on investment, they're more interested in hunting the next product, and the next product. When we talked about technology which had a cost, then obviously once they bought one, they'd rather not have another cost. Yeah. So we're transitioning around. I think we'll be much better behaved now that technology's begun to surge into the marketplace, about talking about what it's delivering rather than what it is, or what we've chosen to call it for the last 5 years.
Okay, so one company that has clearly been delivering something the last couple of years is Microsoft.
Yep. And
they just announced, I don't know, they have almost 300 million active users monthly on the Teams, biggest growing product ever, and just recently announced 12 million voice PSTN users as well. So they're sort of blowing away this whole UCaaS concept as one of the hyperscalers. It's a huge change in the industry.
I think it is. I mean, I think what you have to remember, in our industry, we are always partners and always competitors with each other. That's the nature of our business.
Nature, yeah.
And
makes it fun.
I think, again, all of us who were selling virtual meetings and that sort of hybrid working tool for the last 10 years probably, were delighted to see somebody actually break the impasse and get people to recognise what it is. But again, you look at it and you say, Microsoft, in terms of the products that they deliver, they are products that deliver an outcome. There are competing products that deliver a similar outcome. And you see two or three, I think during the COVID period, Microsoft in the business sector, Zoom in the consumer sector were the strong names that came through. Yeah. They delivered roughly the same thing. The ability for people to communicate and contact each other from a distance through a virtual experience. Yeah. So both of those have broken the seal on the products and services that go through, and certainly have engaged a lot of interest and customer drive through to it. But again, as vendors, we're looking at saying, what is the most appropriate solution for the customer? Yep. And I think the customers are still trying to find out, right? Because we're at the early stage, really, of this new way of working. Well, remember, again, we call this a collaboration space. Right. Well, we're collaborating now. We're sitting around a table. We're working on a project. Everybody collaborates. The question is, are people using the depth of the collaboration tool, or are they just using the virtual meeting tool? What are you using? Because you've got all sorts of things like perpetual meetings and project management and workflow and all that sort of thing that can engage through. So how deep are people going into these products? Yep. They're not, again, not interested in the product. They're interested in the outcome, the challenge that they've got as a business, and what tool produces that result. And whoever is able to best match technology to the desired outcomes will be the person who earns the revenue and the kudos for delivering that result. Yeah. There's something special about the SME market in all of this, right? If you look at the phenomenal growth of Microsoft and Zoom, I would say a lot of that is also a large enterprise. Large enterprises are different from small and medium enterprises. Yeah, I mean, I think the SMB space, I've always loved the SMB. I think it's a very challenged environment. There's good working entrepreneurs, little local businesses and that sort of thing. But the workforce is broader than just knowledge workers. Right. And I think one of the things that we have to remember as suppliers of solutions to people is that we're not just looking after the people who naturally sit in front of a screen all day long and work on computer-based projects. We've got frontline workers, we've got mobile workers, we've got deskless workers, we've got people on lathes in workshops, in warehouses and all that sort of thing. So as communication suppliers, what we have to do is look at the general outcomes for the business and try and blend it together so that a workforce can remain connected and supported by the management structure, by the communication structure within the business, and react to those changes that come thick and fast these days in terms of how they have to operate and how they have to exist. So I think the SMB space is also very interesting because they will need both advice on how to see technology and where to match it to the outcomes that they want, but it also has to be at an appropriate price, it has to be at an appropriate level of technology, and it has to be adoptable quite quickly and seamlessly. So when we go to market in the SMB space, we have to factor that they will spend less time or have less time to spend engaging with it. So it needs to be simple to adopt and simple to deliver.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's complicated because all these small and medium-sized companies are different, and there's mobile, fixed, collaboration, different kinds of workers. It's very complicated.
It is.
It's not simple.
And I think that's where the service providers, where the resellers in this marketplace are layering together revenue streams. Because once they've done the appropriate work of learning about the business and understanding the business challenges and understanding the staff and the process within those businesses, then they can not only deliver the hybrid worker tools, but they can deliver the mobility tools, the general communications requirements, the customer experience tools. They've done the investigation. Now they're best placed to deliver all of the functional facts, including connectivity and that sort of thing as it goes through.
It sounds like we're at the start of the next normal and not at the end of it. Let's